Hello and welcome to my astrology channel. My name is Martine, and if you are new here, I do videos on mainly Vedic astrology, but also with some tropical influences and insights. And I focus on both natal and relationship astrology. And if you like this video and you would like to hear more content from me, please like, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell to see when I will post a new video. And also, if you're interested in a personal consultation, I do consultations on a variety of subjects. Please email me at the email that I will leave in the video description. Thank you. So this topic is something that I've actually only thought about relatively recently, but it is something that has been on my mind really a lot these days. And as I have said before, I really feel I want to talk about a particular subject when I get the inspiration and when I feel like I really have something to say, and this is one of those messages / topics. And also it's a topic where for which I would really appreciate any kind of feedback or any kind of insights that you might want to contribute with, because it is really just something that I noticed, a pattern that I noticed. It's not something that I read anywhere with regards to astrology. So please write about any thoughts or examples, related examples that you might think of. And it's namely to do with the issue of obsessions / unrequited affection. Now, if you come from a tropical astrology background, you probably have heard Pluto being connected to the issue of obsessions, obsessive love. To some extent, there's Lilith also, which in Vedic astrology, nobody looks at Lilith. Nobody looks at asteroids and stuff. And to be honest, I don't really look at it either, except for, from a purely curious point of view. But I try not to overcomplicate things, and there are so many techniques and things in Vedic astrology that can more than make up for any kind of insight I might get from asteroids or specifically tropical methods of interpretation. But with regards to, so you probably have heard Pluto and maybe Lilith aspects in synastry being connected to obsessive relationships, infatuations, sometimes bordering on toxic relationships, and I have found this to be borderline true. This is also why I look at Pluto. I look at Pluto in synastry and in the composite chart. So in synastry meaning chart interaspects and chart overlays. And also in the composite chart of a relationship. And I also have made that video about, I have made two videos about Pluto in the composite. One is about, actually no, not two, only one. Yeah. I've made that video about Sun opposite Pluto in the composite chart. I mean, that is one aspect, as well as square Pluto. I've noticed that as well in several relationships. That is one aspect that I've seen over and over again, showing difficult relationships and these kind of power play relationships, even cases of narcissistic abuse. I've seen that appearing, that aspect in the composite chart. I've seen it in relationships where one of the partners was a narcissist. But I digress. It's not necessarily about obsessions, but Pluto, actually, yes, so Pluto in obsessions comes up is especially when you see Venus opposite Pluto in the composite chart, or Venus square Pluto in the composite chart. I've seen this one ending badly. Usually one person is obsessed with the other emotionally and becomes almost like a love slave. Don't quote me on that, because that's super dramatic. I don't have a script for this video, so I'm just gonna ramble. But yeah, and I've seen that one coming up a lot, and especially also in inter aspects, when you see Pluto hard aspects to Venus, that can show unrequited attraction. And also Pluto hard aspects to the moon. You would be surprised. I've seen this so often. Moon opposite or square Pluto creates these really intense obsessions between two people. I would not 100%. Sometimes that can lead to unrequited love, but not so much unrequited. It's just they create this kind of unhealthy attraction. Like, even if when it is mutual, usually the relationships don't end well. But with the Venus-Pluto aspects, they often show up in unrequited affection. So, like, if you see somebody who has, usually it's both people. So it's both the Pluto or the Venus person that can become obsessed with the other person. And especially with the hard aspects, so the conjunction, the square, or the opposition, this can show unrequited affection. But so this was like a small introduction. This is with tropical astrology, and these are things that can show unrequited love and obsessions. And in Vedic astrology, Rahu also can show obsessions. So if you have Venus Rahu in or Ketu, no, actually also no, Ketu actually shows past life connections, so it's not necessarily obsessions, but Rahu shows really intense attraction. So like Venus Rahu, Mars Rahu can show something that is kind of borderline unrequited obsessive. But these are still minor aspects. The main part that I wanted to get to is there is a pattern that I've noticed over the years with all the charts that I've looked at and synastry reports that I've looked at. And this actually makes sense from a psychological point of view, but let me know what you think. I don't have any like celebrity examples for this one because it would probably take way too much research. So in short, what do I think creates unrequited attraction? And you know these cases of people who like develop a really unhealthy infatuation, like to the point where they spend 5-10 years, in a bad relationship that they never get their needs met into, or they maintain an infatuation for some person that they never even had a real relationship with, but somehow they convince themselves that this is the right person for them. And they stay hooked on this person for years, and they get the blinkers on, and they don't even notice if there's somebody around who maybe would have been a better match because they are so set on this one particular person. And before I get into it, a few more disclaimers. I'm not talking about situations like the aspects that I talked about that show delay in marriage or that show, pickiness. That's not what I'm talking about. So there are situations where a person is picky because they have a karmic contract. So like, basically they are waiting for the right person to come to have a relationship because they have some kind of debt to cover towards that person. But that's getting into the metaphysical point of view. There are some aspects, and I have mentioned them in a few videos, that do show this kind of thing. So you're basically waiting for the right person. And delay in marriage also to some extent can be so the aspects that show delay in marriage, I have made a video about them, can also to some extent show that you're waiting for the right person or that you have some kind of karma to pay. But it can also show that you are simply meant to prioritize other things in your life before you can get into a serious relationship. So this thing that I'm going to talk about, this has nothing to do with these aspects. It has to do with the partner significators in the natal chart. Now, if you have watched a lot of my videos before, you will know by now that there are several points and astrological placements in the natal chart of each individual, and also in the navamsha or the D9 chart of each individual, the ninth harmonic, that hint towards the kind of person that someone is attracted to / attracts in their life. And this archetype shows, like, basically it's your type, the kind of people that you are attracted to, and the kind of people, and the reason why you are attracted to these kinds of people is because on some level, you feel like this is the person who will balance you out in this lifetime. So there is, again, I guess you can call it a bit of a karmic influence to do with it, because you are meant to be attracted to certain types of people. But what I've seen happen is I'm not sure, again, if there is like one person for everybody else, because actually in astrology, unless you are in one of those exceptions of karmic aspects where you have to pay back a debt, it's actually more likely that you can have multiple soulmates, people that you can have relationships with and that you are meant to have relationships with in this life. And so it's not like you are set on one particular person. But this, to do with this personal archetype exception that I'm going to be talking about, this makes a person very picky, and it makes a person very set on one particular type of person. So the signifiers of the relationship, right? You have to look at Venus for a man, Jupiter, Mars for a woman, the ruler of the 7th house in the D1 or the natal chart, the ruler of the 7th house in the D9 or the navamsha, planets placed in the 7th house, either in the D1 or in the D9 charts, planets placed in the 5th house to a lesser extent, also in the D1, especially in the D1 in this case. And last but not least, the Darakarka, right? And these are just the main aspects that will paint a picture of your personal romantic archetype. And the Darakarka, as I have mentioned before, is the planet with the lowest degree. So, and all of these things together, you have to look at all of them, and they paint the picture of the kind of person that you are attracted to. Now, what I've noticed is that people who have like all of these signifiers pointing towards one particular energy, or maybe one or two particular energies, these are the people that become very likely infatuated with one person, and they have a hard time letting go of a particular relationship once they get involved, because they have a very, very specific type of person that they are looking for. So let me give you an example. If a person, like let's say a man has Mercury as a Darakarka, or it could be another planet, but let's say the Darakarka is conjunct Mercury, and also in the D1 and the D9 chart, Mercury rules the 7th house. And on top of that, let's say he has Mercury in the 7th house, or like this is kind of an extreme example, but it's enough if you have 3 or 4 of these pointing towards one planet. Obviously this person is going to be very attracted to a Mercury type of individual, right? So they're going to be attracted to somebody who's youthful, intellectual, analytical, resourceful, maybe works in an intellectual profession, is versatile, communicative, good at communicating, expressing themselves, all kinds of things, everything connected to Mercury, but especially, somebody who's also youthful, right? And imagine this is a man, right? And this is a person who is very attracted to a youthful, resourceful, playful, literary, social butterfly, pretty woman. What happens is he will become convinced, so when he meets a woman that embodies this Mercury archetype, or at least on the surface seems to exude this kind of mercurial energy, he will be very infatuated, because he will be like, okay, I have finally met the person of my dreams. This is the person I've been waiting for my whole life, or like for a long time, and I know 100% that this is the right person for me, and now that I've met her, I'm not going to let her go. And what happens is, if you look at the woman's chart and maybe you don't see any of her partner archetype points showing somebody that will match him back, the attraction will not be mutual, but the man in question will still hold on to this belief of like, but this is the right person for me. Like, I know that this is the right person for me. She has to be the one. Like, imagine if a man like this, who really has like an overwhelming Mercury influence on all of the partner dispositors in his chart, meet somebody, a woman with Gemini ascendant with Mercury in the first house, or Gemini Aruda Lagna, or Mercury in the Aruda Lagna. You know, a woman who really, on the surface, her personality, her physical appearance, really exudes mercurial energy. He will fall in love with an image, with an idealized image, because the rest of her chart may not show that, you know, she has this energy as strong as she appears to hold on the surface, on the one hand. And on the other hand, like I said before, it could simply be that it's his attraction is very one-sided, because he will convince himself that this is the right person for him, but the woman may have different dispositors that do not match him as a person. So like, let's say you look at the woman's dispositors, and her dispositors are also overwhelmingly pointing towards Mercury and Venus. It will show that she's going to be attracted to a guy who's young and handsome and artistic, right? And let's say that this man in question who was attracted to her is like 45 and he works in banking, and she's like 25 and she's looking for, a guy who's around her age and is a rock star, or like, that's kind of a cliche example, but somebody who's artistic doesn't have to be a rock star, just an example. But the man in question will still be like, oh, this is the right person for me, this is whatever. And depending on what other aspects this person might have, if you also have like, on top of the fact that your archetypes point towards one particular energy, maybe you also have a synastry with this person with a lot of Saturn. I've seen this time and again when one person has their Saturn conjunct somebody else's planet, and the planet person doesn't have their Saturn equally activated. A lot of the times it shows that the Saturn person is willing to commit to the planet person, but the planet person doesn't see the other one as a worthwhile investment. And actually, I wanted to do an entire different video about Saturn aspects in synastry, and I will be doing that. I already made that video on Saturn-Mars aspects. That's like one of the first videos that I ever made. But I also want to make another video in the future specifically getting in depth about Saturn and synastry and what the deal is, because there are a lot of misconceptions. But this was just one example. So like, usually I've seen, especially for people who have a strong Saturn in their chart and they meet somebody that they have somebody who has a strong Saturn energy in their chart, if they meet somebody whose planets are conjunct or opposite their Saturn, they will really tend to think that, okay, this is a long-term partner investment. So this is somebody that I want to be in a committed long-term relationship with. And the other person may not reciprocate, based on their chart and based on their Saturn. And so on top of this, if you have, like I mentioned, so if you have the archetype matching this person, and you also have a strong Saturn and your Saturn is conjunct their planets, this will really create a long-lasting fixation with this particular person. And I've seen this a lot of times. Not like, I just threw in the Saturn thing. So the Saturn thing is optional. Even if you don't have the Saturn, if you just have the archetype, I've seen it so many times, that you become fixated with a person. And I remember one time I was talking to this lady who, like, she was telling me she was obsessed with the same guy since college, and she was like in her mid-30s. And she was still mainly obsessed with this one guy, and she was like, felt deep down that he was the right one for her and all. And I remember just talking to her, and I was just trying really hard to, be sympathetic, because what happens oftentimes is that these people, like I mentioned, they put the blinkers on, and because they find this one person that, again, this person might match their ideal only on the surface. Like I gave the example of the woman with the Gemini ascendant. But this person, the archetype person, whose relationship archetype is being activated, they will become convinced, this is it, this is the right person for me, and they will stay hooked, and they will not even consider dating other people or being open to other relationships. And as a consequence, they miss out, and they waste a lot of time and energy on this, being in love with an image thing. And another thing that I've noticed is this appears in relationships where the person is having a hard time letting go. So let's say you're having a relationship with someone that really matches your archetype, and you see these cases. I've usually seen it where the man is like this, but I guess it's not strictly gender based. It could happen to both men and women. But you are in a relationship with somebody who meets your archetype, and then the relationship ends, usually because the other person breaks up with you, and you are hooked, and you have a hard time letting go, and maybe you're still stalking their profiles, and maybe you're still thinking about them 5 years later, and all this stuff, and sometimes this can create borderline obsessive, stalkerish kind of relationships. Of course, if there are also other aspects in a person's chart that can show that there's a dark tendency there with the person in question, but this is usually, at least this was my observation, and why I think obviously this happens because the person has a very narrow expectation. They have this very narrow type of person that they want to date. See, what would happen if, like, one person has, let's say they have multiple planets, like let's say they have 3 or 4 planets aspecting their relationship dispositors. Like let's say they have 7th house in the D1 is ruled by Mars, and 7th house in the D9 is ruled by Venus, and the dark arca is Saturn. So there are multiple planets in there involved. This person is not going to be as obsessive, because they're not going to hold out for this one particular type of person, and they're going to be totally putting all of their eggs in one basket, no pun intended. And but they're going to be more open to people who maybe only partially meet their needs. So it's going to be easier for them to gain some satisfaction from relationships, right? Because they're at least, like, let's say they're going to date somebody who's older and mature, so at least they're going to have their Saturn part of the archetype satisfied, even though maybe this person is not as adventurous or good looking as Mars and Venus would suggest. But at least the relationship will get them part of what they need in that interaction. But on the other hand, so in the previous example, so like let's say they would only like Mercury, or they would only like Venus. They only want that specific type of archetype. So like if a man has a lot of Venus energy on his partner archetype, he's obviously going to be attracted to very good looking women, most likely young, most likely, maybe not models, but women who are very good looking and very well proportioned and stuff. So they're going to hold out for that particular archetype, right? And they're not going to be really fulfilled in a relationship where this archetype is not met in his partner. So yeah, this is it. This is what I wanted to say. Again, if you are, I would be really curious to hear any kind of input or examples that you might have. Maybe you yourself have most of your archetype planets pointing towards one particular energy. I would be very curious to hear your thoughts and your examples. So this was it. Thank you for listening, and once again, if you like this content and you would like to see more videos from me, please like, subscribe, hit the notifications bell, and if you're interested in a personal consultation, please email me at the email address that I will leave in the video description. Thank you.